found that your show was very dated on basically opinions and thought processes that I literally thought that it was dead like 20 years ago. And I was very triggered because I came on this show and it felt like I walked through a portal back to like literally age 13, being at like, church indoctrination camp, basically. And I've spent so long, I thought, healing myself from that ideology. And I guess I came on this show and I was honestly shocked that there was still pockets of society that were perpetuating the ideologies that I discovered you promoting to very young, impressionable minds. So I guess...
What ideologies?
Basically colonialism, white supremacy, woman-hating, just basically the mother wound. I could really feel the mother wound unhealed from you guys being... I could understand that the show was all about basically you unleashing your mother wound onto any female that had the compensatory father wound that would match that. So a trauma bond, essentially. So I found that the show created an environment whereby females, almost 100%, are being invited to essentially...
I'm sorry, we have to pause momentarily. What's wrong?
Yeah, white supremacy?
Yeah.
What was anything, even race, talked about in that entire show?
Well, you have to understand when it comes to ancestral or generational trauma that I was responding to, it has nothing to do with the external appearance of things. It's an energetics. So when I say white supremacy, I'm referring to the energetics of there being basically a hierarchy of worthiness given to humanity. That's just frankly faulty. So I do believe that there is a hierarchy of calling for humanity, meaning we're not all gifted with the same intelligence, or obviously not everybody is made to be a thought leader or a scientist or things like that that require a higher level of access to consciousness. But I do believe that we all have an inherent equal worthiness before Creator, and I believe that those of us who are leaders are called to lead well the class of people who are not intellectually capable of seeing from a big enough perspective to lead themselves. Hence why we started out having like a president or a government or things like that.
Okay, but hang on, let's back up a little bit. Do you agree that white is a heuristic?
Is what?
It's a heuristic.
I don't know what that word means.
It's like a descriptor for a set of traits, characteristics that you're looking at. That
right,
like it's an identifier for that.
Right. So I believe that it started out being an identifier.
No,
similar.
I mean it is right this second. Like if a cop gets on and he says white male suspect and he's running southbound.
Yes. It is a facade. It's a mask that people wear.
Well, that's just a heuristic.
Well, it's easily changed though.
Yeah, that's because it's a heuristic. So if it's a heuristic, right?
So what I'm saying is...
Hang on.
Okay.
Let's back up. So when you say white supremacist views, right?
Mm-hmm. The energetics.
Okay, but hang on. What comes to my mind is this heuristic, which is associating people with these characteristics who think they're superior to people who have the same set of characteristics, but they're different. They're a different color.
So the problem is, for example, we had the black gal on here, and I would say that she grew up white. So essentially, you can tell from her wounding and her trauma responding and how she was trying to please you and everything that she was saying, you could tell that she was raised, even though her skin was black, she was raised with the ideology that white man is correct. So she took on all the colonialism, the Judeo-Christian indoctrination, and the basically subordination of women in that
there is literally
society.
No possible way for you to know, based on the few conversations you had with this chick who was sitting here, that she's conceding to what's being said, not because she disagrees with it, but because she has been conditioned to believe that everything that I say is true because I'm white.
I'm actually a very expert savant psychological profiler, so I'm telling you, I can tell.
Okay. I am a savant psychological profiler, so I'm telling you, I can tell that she wasn't.
Okay, fine. Agree to disagree.
Does that seem like it's even a reasonable argument to make?
Yeah, to me it does, because I know my exact training and my expertise, and I am telling you, I have studied humans enough and their psyche to know what was presenting.
So the white supremacist stuff that you heard on the program was you just made it up?
No, it wasn't.
So what actually appealed to any type of whiteness being grouped or categorized as being superior to some other ethnicity or something like this? Can you give me a single example of that? Now, I don't want to hear about energetics and the perception of things, which we're not talking about. I want to hear about things we are talking about.
Okay, so you don't actually want to understand me. You actually want to misunderstand me.
Well, because, and this is important, when we're having a conversation, if I use a word and then you use a word, but we're using the word completely differently, then we're not having a conversation.
Exactly.
So let's agree on what white means.
Well, we can change the word if white doesn't resonate with you.
Well, you said white supremacist, so I want to know what you mean by white.
Do you want to use colonization?
No, I want to use the word white. What do you mean by white?
I mean an ideology.
An ideology.
Yes.
So you don't mean a skin color?
No.
Okay, so in this ideology, does that require superiority?
Yes.
Okay, so it requires superiority. So now that we've established that this is an ideology and it requires superiority, what makes it white? Because tons of ideologies require superiority. So what makes it specifically in that white category versus, I don't know, black liberation theology or something like this?
Because I see that ideology particularly running through so strongly. Maybe Hitler started it. Maybe that was where it started. But there is a ideology that's running consistent throughout all the different cultures that either you are white or you need to get white in order to have the highest value in the world right now.
Yeah, but again, you haven't actually identified what makes it white. What makes it white?
Again, I am using white symbolically. I am using white as a symbol of a particular ideology.
So then why isn't it black? Why wouldn't you say it was black supremacist ideology?
I didn't make the rules. I'm just giving you the information.
Yeah, but if I say to you, this thing that I'm talking about an ideology, and that this ideology believes it's superior to another ideology, and therefore other ideologies are inferior to it. I can agree with that, but I do need to know why this distinct word white is being used there.
Why do you need to know that, Andrew?
Well, because you made the claim that it's white supremacy. You didn't say ideological supremacy?
You can pick a different word.
I did. Black supremacy?
So you want to replace white with black?
I mean, would we be saying the same thing?
Yeah, I believe we would, because then this woman was then propagating black supremacy then, if you want to use black.
From your worldview.
I am talking about the ideology that there could be a best way to human.
Yeah, but you could advocate that there's a best way to human without saying that that necessarily makes one human superior to another.
I agree.
So
I agree, but I don't believe that we have a population right now that has the intellect to even go that deep into the understanding of what an ideology is.
Yeah, but when you use
they're very surface level.
So this is what confuses me. When you use loaded language, like you understand that politically white supremacy has a completely different, because you just said, right, when you're talking about people, word X resonates with people and hits with them differently.
Yeah.
So if you're using the loaded language of white supremacy, why am I not to assume that if you don't actually mean white supremacy, that you're saying that for the purposes of just kind of attacking the show, rather than using it for the purpose of actually trying to express an idea?
It feels to me that I'm trying to express my idea, but that you have a particular agenda of not understanding what I'm saying. And so it's kind of a dead end. Let's go to the next topic.
Well, you can understand from my perspective, if I came over and I was like, hey, the big problem that I have is that, you have plants in front of your house.
I'm not listening to anything you're saying after I push this button, so we can move to the next topic because it's a dead end.
We did move to a different topic.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You were still talking about it.
I'm talking about ideologies.
So the topic now is ideologies?
How can we even
Why-
have a
wait.
conversation if we weren't talking about ideologies?
Well, I thought you were still on specifically the word white.
Well, no, I'm just trying to get your thought pattern down. So would it be helpful to you? Maybe we can back up.
Sure.
Would it be helpful to you if we defined our ideologies, why we think the way that we think, and where it is that we're coming from?
Yes.
Would that be helpful?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, well, let's start with yours, and then I'll do mine.
It would actually be better for you to go first so I know what you're looking for.
Okay, so to explain to you my worldview, and there's a bit of complication, but I'm going to try to get it really condensed so that you can understand where I'm coming from. So I'm an Eastern Orthodox Christian.
Eastern, can you explain that
Yeah,
further?
I'm about to. Yep, I'm about
Okay.
to explain what that means. So there's many types of Christians, you would say, but there are some kind of universal agreements among what are considered Trinitarian Christians, okay? So this would include, so the descriptor I'm about to give you is going to include Protestants. It's going to include Protestants, it's going to include Catholics, right? It's going to include Eastern Orthodox. It's gonna
Just a
include-
second. Brian, where
okay.
do you want it?
It's placed.
Do you want it right there?
Yeah,
Is-
let them finish.
Okay, but you're very bothered, and then that bothers me, so I want you to feel comfortable. What's the issue you're having?
It's placed. It's all fine.
Okay.
All right, we're all good. Okay, so I'm going to try to give a kind of encompassing ideology here for the Christian worldview. The Christian worldview, how I see it.
Okay.
And I think that the descriptor that I'm going to give is going to...
So I have a question for you, really quick.
Before I get through the
you
ideology,
even, yes,
before I can even
before
tell you
you
the
do.
ideology?
Are we having
Before I can
a-
tell you my ideology, you have a question about
I
it
do.
before I've even asked?
I do.
Okay, what's the question?
Are you trying to promote that your ideology is superior to mine?
No, I'm just trying to explain what it is.
But then why is it a debate? Because you can have your belief and I can have my belief and it's apples and oranges. I don't see the point.
So do you want to have a conversation with somebody and you don't even know what their worldview is?
Well, I'm saying if it's a debate and we don't share the same worldview, what's the point?
Because, well, that would be the point. Worldviews, so debates are about worldviews. Debates are about not only worldviews, but they're about paradigms. So I have a paradigm in a set way that I look at the world, so do you.
Right.
There's no way to avoid this. It doesn't matter who you are, there's going to be a paradigm in which you view the world. So what we can do is we can utilize the paradigm in the worldview, and that'll relay a shitload of information to you immediately about all the things that I would believe across a large spectrum of things.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Right, but then what I'm saying is if I am, let's say, I don't know if I am, but let's say I'm diabolically opposed to that.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, I'm a Satan worshiper and you're a Christian.
Yeah.
Okay, and we are trying to debate. So I'm just trying to understand what the point of all this is.
Do you think
so
that
it's-
debate's
so-
about agreeing with worldviews?
Yeah, maybe that's what I thought as a woman, because I'm basically groomed to have to agree with the males in leadership. Otherwise,
No.
it gets to be a
If you were
very
a
toxic
Satanist-
environment for me.
Yeah, so if you were a Satanist and you were debating with a Christian, you would have different expressed worldviews, and then you would debate the incoherency or the problems or the non-problems with these worldviews. They don't always have to be opposing necessarily. There could be points of a debate
Okay,
in which
so,
you're looking for
so
agreement.
is it like and honestly, this is not me trying to be difficult. I don't live in a man's world. I literally am like basically a stay-at-home mom.
This is just the world.
Okay, I get it, but I've been like sheltered, I guess you could say. So I'm trying to learn, honestly, I think what you're inviting me to do is kind of invoke my masculine energy and come to the table with you and basically poke holes at your ideology and you poke holes at mine, and then we kind of see where in the
Or-
Venn diagram we might be
Or the
able to
opposition.
agree.
We could find tons of agreement and not be
True.
poking holes in anybody's
True,
ideology.
true.
Or we could be looking at concepts exactly the same way but expressing them differently. I don't know any of that until I understand what your worldview is and you understand what mine is.
You can leave it on the table if you want, Desiree.
So
you can just leave it in
So
the
as,
corner
as a
right there.
psychologist, though, I don't know how you would say it's feminine or masculine energy, though, because you're a psychologist. The entirety of what you do is understanding worldviews.
True. So I do have that part of me that's what I'm trying to get at is, are you trying to talk to Desiree, the woman who basically goes around and feels what everything feels like, or are you trying to invoke my scientist
Well, from a
brain?
from a philosophical angle,
Yeah.
if we were to take you, Desiree, take
GR_Gracie donated $100. Making the word human a verb. Changing the subject when you run out of talking points. Not off to the greatest start. BTW. When you make everything about race, it kinda makes you a racist. Smile.
Thank you, Gracie. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. So where are we? Oh, yeah. So when we're talking about worldviews from a psychologist's angle, don't you need to know why people believe the things that they believe?
Well, the thing is I tried to explain to you that I am a really expert psychological profiler, so I don't need to have a lot of back and forth with people to understand enough about their ideology to know the program that they're spitting back at me. So that's why it's, to me, to my brain, you have to understand, it feels like a waste of my time, because even though you haven't verbally expressed your ideology, I can tell what it is by the way that you try to trigger me. So,
How
for
have I
example,
tried to trigger you?
well, honestly, I don't think you want my brain to start unraveling that whole explanation, because it could go on for a really long time. And
Yeah, I
deep.
feel like I've just asked you a couple of questions.
Right, but
In fact, so I'm not even in debate mode right now. I'm just trying to figure out. So from the way I think of it, if I take your brain, I take it out and I put it inside of a computer, you're not you anymore. You've now become something else. You are you with maybe all of those thoughts that you had are there, but you're not you. Right? And so you, the encompassment of what is Desiree, is going to be body, mind, soul, everything, right? The entirety of you and the ideology which fits you. That's what ontologically is Desiree. It's what makes you you and not her. Right? So if I took your brain and put it in Madison, you're still not you. You're something else. That's not you.
I would disagree with that, because
That's why I need your ideology.
Okay. So my ideology is that there is a universal consciousness, a universal intelligence. We can call that God. We can call that astrology. We can call that life. We can call it whatever's beating your heart. You didn't create yourself. So whatever it is that you believe
Killer
created
of
you.
Cereal donated $100. It seems as though you are the one who has been indoctrinated to believe that you don't have a voice. Might it be the feminist ideals that make you feel this way? Desiree, you are all of your brain.
Thank you, Killer of Cereal.
So you said you were on universal intelligence. When you say universal intelligence, I've actually heard this reference before psychologically as the id, or sometimes the superego, or sometimes things like this. Are you referring to those types?
No.
Okay.
I'm referring to literally the vibrational information that has been passed down from the beginning of time. So really, if you want to go into the science of it, it's actually passed down by the spores. So if you study
Hang on.
fungi,
Before we get into the particulars, right, I'm just looking for the universals. So like
it's just to be honest with you,
intelligence?
I don't have a basic ideology, and contrary to popular belief, I wasn't indoctrinated by anything but literally observing things for myself and digging into my own psyche. So
Okay.
I can't be put into a box, and that's why it gets...
Well, there's no way, no matter how you would describe, what you ideologically believe, there would be no way, perhaps if I gave you an infinite amount of time to describe it, for us to ever get the full scope and picture, right? That would be impossible.
Right.
But we can get
Right.
we can get an idea.
Right.